Chapter 8 of Living Time by Maurice Nicoll, Recurrence in the Same Time. To return to the idea of recurrence, Nietzsche saw the universe, quote, as a circle consisting in a definite number of changes which continually recurs. Activity is eternal, the number of the products and states is limited. End quote. The Eternal Recurrence 6. His argument was that no incalculable number of states could evolve out of a given state of energy, the quantum energy that is the universe, or a system of limited forces, so that repetition was bound to happen sooner or later. Quote, the whole process of becoming consists of a repetition of a definite number of precisely similar states. Everything has returned. Sirius and the spider, and thy thoughts at this moment, and this last thought of thine, that all these things will return. End quote. The dust at our feet is formed from the ashes of innumerable once living creatures. It will live again in these creatures, in the circle of becoming. Quote, fellow man, your whole life, like a sandglass, will always be reversed and will ever run out again. A long minute of time will elapse until all these conditions out of which you were evolved return in the wheel of the cosmic process, and then you will find every pain and every pleasure, every friend and every enemy, every hope and every error, every blade of grass and every ray of sunshine once more. This ring, in which you are but a grain, will glitter afresh forever, and in every one of these cycles of human life there will be 1 hour where for the first time one man, and then many, will perceive the mighty thought of the eternal recurrence of all things. And for mankind this is always the hour of noon. End quote. Ask yourself the question, with the thought of recurrence in your mind, is what I am doing now what I am prepared to do an incalculable number of times? Before this thought is effective, it is necessary to know and understand a great deal. In connection with the idea of recurrence, Nietzsche asks a pertinent question. How can we give weight to our inner life, to the thoughts which powerfully affect it, without making it appear evil and fanatical towards people who think otherwise? The difficulty is that people do not want to think, to arouse themselves. Even when we are discontented with life, we do not want to make the effort of thinking or finding new outlooks. A man wants momentary enjoyment. He does not want to be disturbed. He prefers to cling to the opinions he has and to make everything as easy as possible for himself. The idea of recurrence is painful unless understood. Most of us look for rest at death or annihilation. How often does the physician hear the dying say, I want only rest, oblivion, even amongst those who appear to have held the strongest religious opinions? How few of us truly wish to meet anyone again, or at least how few are those we could ever deeply wish to meet. We need to find new reasons for meeting again, and how strangely the doctrine of recurrence affects us here, for the next life is this life. We meet everyone again. Have we lived this life in such a way that we desire to live it again? Have we unfinished things that we long to finish, and have not time? Quote, ye fancy that you will have a long rest betwixt your last moment of consciousness and the first ray of dawn of your new life. No time will elapse. As a flash of lightning will the space go by, even though living creatures think it is billions of years, and are not even able to reckon it. Timelessness and immediate rebirth are compatible, once intellect is eliminated. End quote. Stamp, he says, the impress of eternity upon your life, for this thought contains more than all religions which teach us to despise life. This life is thy eternal life. Of course this statement is incomplete, as any statement about recurrence must necessarily be. Nietzsche takes eternity in the usual sense. Also he does not comprehend the dimension of time itself. He does not grasp the idea of the living time. But the idea of the life standing through all its length in time is completed by the idea of the recurrence of the life. The life is, and the experience of the life in some form returns. As Nietzsche says, such ideas by themselves can alter us. He sees the idea of recurrence as the supreme idea for the future, one that will lead to a state of life on earth of which the imagination of no utopist has ever dreamt. But he puts this very far distant. He apparently believes that passing time brought man to a certain point of understanding, that the transformation of man lies always in the future of passing time. This mighty sport, he says, will require many millenniums. But is this not just what we always think about the action of time? Are we not always in the state of believing that the mere passage of days will bring something new and wonderful? It is strange that he did not see that the comprehension of such ideas as that of recurrence lies at right angles to time, and that all growth of man lies in that direction. Let us turn back to a study of older sources. As I said, the idea of recurrence is ancient. It is an idea that has lurked in the background of man's speculations about life from the beginning of our European thought. But it is an idea that has so much latent content that we cannot expect any clear formulation of it. It is too deep. If we say that it probably comes nearer the truth about another life than any other view, we must not expect that a logical statement concerning it must therefore be possible. It is above logic. In a sense, at a time when otherworldliness has become too weak a concept for the modern mind, the idea of recurrence brings with it a new worldliness, a new materialism that relates itself both to this life and another. For now we exist no longer in a world of solid matter, but in a world of energies, dimensions and relations, and we must connect all these with the concept of life, going beyond three-dimensionality, present moment and solid body. The life is a circle. The image of the circle of the life is found in the New Testament. In James 3:6, the revolution of a man's life is spoken of, the wheel of becoming. Quote, "The tongue setteth on fire the wheel of nature," margin, birth. End quote. New quote from Weymouth's translation, "setting on fire the whole round of our lives." End quote. In the Old Testament, the spiritual universe is seen in the form of wheels. In the vision of Ezekiel, chapter 10, quote, "Now as I looked upon the wheels, they were very high, so high that they were dreadful to behold, and they were full of eyes all round about. And their appearance and their work was, as it were, will within will. As went the living creatures, so went the wheels, and when the living creatures rose, the wheels also were lifted up in correspondence with them. For there was a living spirit, a spirit of life, in the wheels. Wheresoever the spirit was to go, there they went, and where the living creature stood, there they stood, for there was a living spirit in the wheels." End quote. This is the translation given by Taylor Lewis. In another place, 6 Days of Creation, he remarks, in speaking of the cyclical law, repetition, as the law of all natures, that the early rabbinical writers regarded the vision of the wheels of Ezekiel as representative of the whole system of nature. The wheels are cyclic processes, not to be seen in three-dimensional space, but in the supra-sensible world, i.e. in higher space. Aristotle says, "For men are wont to say that all human things are in a circle, and in the same way they speak of all things that have a physical genesis. The reason of this is that all things are measured by time, and have their beginning and their end, as it were, in a period, for time itself seems to be a wheel or cycle." End quote. We do not find the wheel in visible living structure. The time wheel belongs to higher dimensions. The life in time is a circle, but is it complete? We die. Man dies, says the Pythagorean physician Alcmaeon, because he cannot join his end with his beginning. End quote. Now to our ordinary sense of things, the beginning and end of life seems furthest apart. This is because we think of passing time as a movement along a straight line extended between birth and death. So with our ordinary conception of time, it seems nonsense to say that yesterday can be the future of today. But if we take a circle and mark points on it and imagine a movement around it, we can see how any point may be either regarded as future or past in relation to any other point. It is impossible to speak of any beginning in such a circle. If we arrange the days of the week round the circle, we cannot say that any one day begins the circle of days. The whole circle is one thing. Its points lie, quote, together so that you can find no place in which the movement can be said to begin, for it is evident that all parts in the movement both precede and follow one another for ever, and it is in this manner that time revolves, end quote, from the Hermetica literature. Regarding everything as arranged on a recurring time cycle, the philosopher Cardanus, 16th century, observed that no one is a mere successor and heir of his predecessor, but also the converse, owing to the periodic recurrence of all things, i.e., a man comes both after and before his father, grandfather, etc. in the circle of time. The circular movement of time was regarded as a perfecting process by some ancient thinkers. Others saw in it only an everlasting process without comprehensible object. Quote, but is not time the image of eternity, because it affects the perfecting of earthly natures, just as eternity is the container and preserver of being? Things which proceed from eternity and are not able to share in a stable perfection, whole and unchanging, are under the dominion of time. End quote. Proclus. The idea is that incomplete natures, as ourselves, must live in time and succession, not having the strength or being to live in any other state, i.e., we live in becoming because we have no being. Proclus thus gives us a cause for the existence of passing time, it being designed in such a way that, quote, through it all things should be stimulated to their own appropriate energies, by which they are enabled to receive the end adapted to them, through certain apokatastatic periods, end quote. Apokatastasis means recurrence. This positive conception of the universe moving in time relates it ultimately to the highest possible meaning, i.e., a return to perfection throughout all its parts. Proclus says that the operation of time is, quote, to confer perfection on things imperfect, and a circular apokastasias in things that proceed apparently in a straight line of time, end quote. And this, he adds, does not appear to fall short of an invention or contrivance. Observe that this contrivance consists in the bending of time round so that a continual return is possible. We must study different views about this bending of time. First of all, there is the idea of a general apokastasias, according to which the whole history of the universe moves around in one single and immeasurably vast circle. Nietzsche spoke of recurrence from this standpoint. But we have already seen that Proclus spoke of certain apokastastic periods. We will return to Proclus subsequently. The idea of general apokastasias, of a single vast circle of return, especially belonged to Stoic thought. The Stoics conceived one great time circle, comprising the entire universe throughout all its history. Note again that only one circle is indicated, not circles within circles. The period, time of going round of this circle, was called the Magnus Annus. During its passage, the universe passed through certain transformations. One state was that of fire. In the New Testament it is stated that the universe will end in fire, 2 Peter 3:12. For the Stoic there was no end. The circle, not the straight line, underlay their thinking. Everything in the universe eventually returned from complexity to simplicity. The simplest state of matter was called fire, or ether. But once the universe had reached this state, then by successive combinations and condensations it was again restored. As the same laws were always at work, the successive worlds were held to be exactly similar, so that the same persons, the same situations, and the same events appear again and again, i.e., quote, after the conflagration the same things will come to pass by number, so that the separate peculiarities will be the same as before." End quote. Alexander Aphrodaios. Tertullian, the early church father, explains the phrase resurrection of the dead in terms of recurrence of this kind. Everything must be restored to life as the wheel of passing time turns. The body will again come into existence. There can be no end, no cessation, no annihilation, no death as we see death. He writes, quote, "Let me say it once for all, every creation is subject to recurrence. Everything you meet had a previous existence. Whatever you have lost will come again. Everything comes a second time. All things return to a settled position when they have gone away. All things begin when they have ceased to be. They are brought to an end in order that they may come into being. Nothing is lost except that it may be removed. All this revolving order of things, therefore, is evidence of the resurrection of the dead. God ordained it in works before he commanded it in writing. He proclaimed it by strength before he proclaimed it in words. He first sent you nature as a teacher, intending to send you prophecy also, in order that, having learnt from nature, you may the more easily believe prophecy." End quote. And again, quote, "Thou, man of nature so exalted, if thou understands thyself, taught even by the Pythian words, know thyself, Lord of all these things that die and rise, shalt thou die to perish evermore? Wherever your dissolution shall have taken place, whatever material agent has destroyed you or swallowed you up, or swept you away, or reduced you to nothingness, it shall again restore you." End quote. In a letter written in the 1st century AD, the Roman Stoic Seneca observes, quote, "If you are possessed by so great a craving for life, reflect that the things which vanish from our gaze are not annihilated, they merely end their course and do not perish. And death, which we fear and shrink from, merely interrupts life but does not take it away. The day will return when we shall be restored to the light. Many would object to this, but they are returned without memory. I mean to show you later that everything which seems to perish merely changes. Since you are destined to return, depart with a tranquil mind." End quote. The world comes into existence, waxes, grows old, and dies, and again comes into existence, waxes, grows old, and dies, and everything belonging to its life repeats itself. This palingenesis, again becoming, or apokastasias, the restoration or recurrence of all things, was regarded by some of the older Stoics as an exact repetition. In this sense we might understand a remark of Ecclesiastes, that there is no new thing under the sun. He adds, there is no remembrance of former things. One ancient writer says of the gods that they are those who remember the whole previous cycle of events, and that's from Nemesis, the Nature Homonius. But some of the later Stoics believed that there was variation at each repetition. The Church Father, Origen, gives an account of the Stoic point of view in the following passage, quote, "The disciples of the Porch, the Stoics, assert that after a period of years there will be a conflagration of the world, and after that an arrangement of things in which everything will be unchanged, as compared with the former arrangement of the universe. Those of them, however, who evince their dislike for the doctrine have said there will be a change, although exceedingly slight, at the end of the cycle, from what prevailed during the preceding cycle. And these men maintain that the same things will recur, and Socrates will be again the son of Sophronicus and a native of Athens, and Phanerite, being married to Sophronicus, will again become his mother." End quote. And in reference to Pythagoras and the doctrines of his school, Origen, writing about 6 centuries after Pythagoras, asserts that as the planets, after definite cycles, assume the same position and hold the same relation to one another, all things on earth, they, the Pythagoreans, say, will be like what they were at the time when the same state of planetary relations existed in the world. From this point it necessarily follows that when, after the lapse of a lengthened cycle, the planets come to occupy towards each other the same relations which they occupied at the time of Socrates, then Socrates will again be born of the same parents and suffer the same treatment, being accused by Antaeus and Miletus and condemned by the council of the Areopagus again." End quote. In the same passage, Origen states that the Egyptians held views of a similar nature. Contra Celsum, Book 5. It was sometimes said that Pythagoras taught that the soul of man passed through every possible form of life, vegetable, animal, human. But Burnet definitely states that this doctrine of metempsychosis is only the very late authority and is based upon a confusion of ideas. He says that the original Pythagorean teaching was palingenesia, or again becoming. The point that we must notice is that the doctrine of again becoming appeared at the dawn of our European culture, and was apparently not a doctrine of metempsychosis. Man lives his life again. Now in what sense again? A pupil of Aristotle, Eudemus, is reported as having said at one of his lectures that if the teachings of the Pythagoreans was to be believed, then he, Eudemus, would again lecture to them as he was doing at the moment. Quote, "You'll be sitting there, and I shall again be giving you my lecture with this professorial baton in my hand, and everything will be exactly the same." End quote. This passage has been commented upon by many different writers. It is sometimes taken as meaning that following on the destruction of this world will come a new one, in which everything will be the same, that is, it is taken in the Stoic way. In such a case, repetition is in future time, much as if having eaten food today, I eat similar food again tomorrow, and so repeat the process. The passage from which the extract comes is found in the commentaries of Simpliacus on Aristotle's Physics. Quote, "The Pythagoreans said that the same things come numerically again and again. It is not out of place here to call attention to the words of Eudemus, contained in the 3rd book of his Physics, where he says, 'Whether the same time comes, or as some say, and others deny, is open to question.'" End quote. That the same things, the same people, the same events come again in the repetition of the vast cycle of the universe is comprehensible. But are we to think that the same time can be again? We cannot think of time save as passing time unless we grasp the idea of the 4th dimension. If we think of something happening again, we ordinarily think of it happening in the same way, but only at another time. If we think that all history happens again, we think of it happening in some future time. We cannot help thinking again. Our mode of thought, which is moulded on phenomenal presentation and the sequence of before, now, and after, cannot escape from treating the doctrine of apokastasias as a recurrence of the universe in some far distant epoch which has as yet no kind of existence. How can we escape from this word again in thinking of repetition? How can repetition be in the same time? How can we escape from saying, "It was, and it will be, again"? I have already said that if the actuality of the 4th dimension is grasped, all history becomes alive. All is, in this dimension, not was and will be. Every moment is. Every moment is living. The world extended in time is. The creation of the world is in time. It is all present. Once we have passed to another moment, the previous moment seems to be gone forever. But if we could re-enter the moment again, we would live in it, be conscious of it. Our experience of it would be again. But the moment itself would not be again. It would be the same time. Would it not be recurrence in alwaysness, as Ramsay saw it? To return to the passage from Eudemus, the question is whether not only the same things come again and again, but whether the same time comes. The writer says that it is obvious that the same kind of things come over and over again. He observes that summer is followed by winter and winter by summer. The movement of the sun produces the phenomenon of solstice and equinox. This is repetition in sequence in passing time. But the Pythagoreans held that there was another kind of repetition. There is another kind of again in which the same time is re-experienced. Quote, if we are to believe the Pythagorean notions that the same things numerically happen again, then I will talk to you again as now, sitting like this, holding the professor's staff like this, and everything will be just the same and the time will be the same. End quote. Commenting on this passage, A.E. Taylor says, quote, that is, if all events recur, the moment at which they occur must recur too, and the numerically same moment is endlessly repeated. End quote. From A.E. Taylor's Commentary on Plato's Timaeus. That is, I would add, repeated as regards our experience of it. This latter kind of repetition of the same moment, is called by Ouspensky repetition in eternity. The moment is indestructible, ever existing, and so, in this sense, ever eternal. In his comments on the Eudemus passage, he says, quote, these two kinds of repetition, which Eudemus called repetition in the natural order of things and repetition in the number of existences, are repetition in time and repetition in eternity. It follows from this that the Pythagoreans distinguish between these two ideas, which are confused by modern Buddhists and were also confused by Nietzsche. End quote, from Eternal Recurrence in the New Model of the Universe. The number of existences in the same moment is the repetition of life in that moment of time. The moment itself is always in existence, and all that belongs to it, all the thoughts, emotions, spoken words, actions, sensations, are re-experienced, relived, i.e. the moment is re-entered. To return again to the Stoic point of view, which is, so to speak, the most elementary view of recurrence, their magnus annus, or great year, the period of the complete cycle of the world from beginning to end, was estimated at being 365 times 18,000 equals 6,570,000 years. But several other estimates of the great year existed in ancient times. Since the Stoic view of recurrence is limited to the recurrence of the world on a vast scale, according to it all the course of history repeats itself once with every revolution in time, so that every person, thing and event recurs once with every revolution. After a vast lapse of time and after a cycle of vast changes, Columbus again discovers America, Napoleon again marches east, Belgium is again invaded. The same things are again said, the same things done, once more, with every revolution of the cycle. All reappears in its due season, in the world time. The Stoics had no clear idea about time as an actual fourth dimension. The world as it exists in the present moment was for them, I think, its only existence. All the effects of the future lay in the tensions existing in matter in the present moment. The idea that man could recur more frequently than the cycle of the world's history was, therefore, not conceivable to them. Man is, from the Stoic view of recurrence, nothing but a creature of world time, brought into being and destroyed by the vast processes of cyclic repetition of the universe. His time is a function of world time, an infinitesimally minute part of all time from our point of view. With this view, the nightmare sense of infinity paralyzes the imagination. The Medusa appears. Man, the minute, is overwhelmed by the immeasurably vast. What is man's life compared to the life of the whole universe? If man's life is nothing but a minute part of the life of the whole world, if he is inserted into the cycle of all the universe so that his appearance and reappearance is dependent upon the gigantic cosmic processes that belong to the universe, what chance has he of altering anything in his destiny? A hint that Plato appears to give rescues us from the power of this false conception. The life of man is not commensurable with the life of the world, just as the conception of time as a straight line, endlessly going on, produces wrong forms of thought and emotion. so the confounding of man's life with the life of the whole world has the same effect. Everything in time moves round in a circle, but man's time is not the world's time. Man's time is his own, and his recurrence is in terms of his own cycle in time and his aeon. The aeon of the world and man's aeon, though related in manifestation in time, are separate and distinct, and man repeats his period independently of the period of manifestation of the aeon of the world. It is obvious that unless there is a higher dimensional world, unless time itself is, this will be impossible. If the present moment contains all existence, this present moment must be shared by all creation equally. There will be nothing else, no other place. It will be impossible to conceive of different scales, different periods, different fourth dimensions. And if this be such a thing as recurrence, the Stoic view will be the only possible one. In a description of the creation of mankind given by Plato in the Timaeus, each soul is connected with eternity, but is sown in time. Plato uses the following allegory. When the Creator had mixed the substance out of which souls were to be made, quote, "When he had wrought the whole mass, he divided it into souls of equal number with the stars, assigning each separate soul its separate star. Mounting them on these, as it were in chariots, he displayed the universe before them. They were to be sown each in the instrument of time assigned it." End quote. They had been made on the model of the soul of the universe itself, but on being sown into bodies and appearing in time, the impressions coming through the senses produced disorder in them. Quote, "When sensations from without break in upon them and draw the whole volume of the soul after them," end quote, "the inner structure of man is disturbed, and the ratios and proportions existing between body, soul, and mind are interfered with. This is comprehensible. Now if man could readjust these, he became balanced, that is, having right proportions or righteousness. Quote, if they should master these, their life would be righteous. He that should live his appointed time well should return to the abode of the star belonging to him, and live in felicity, in harmony with it." End quote. Otherwise, each succeeding life in time tended towards a degradation of the individual. The knowledge that the soul gained before it was inserted into the instrument of time, when it was in contact with its star, was forgotten to the body. But it was possible to reach it again. Quote, "The soul of man is immortal, and at one time has an end which is termed dying, and at another time is born again, but is never destroyed. The soul, being immortal, and having been born again many times, and having seen all things that exist, has knowledge of them all. If a man is strenuous and does not faint, he can reach all knowledge through mastering his soul." End quote. This he must be taught how to do, but from another aspect there is no teaching but only recollection, i.e. the soul, freed from the excessive impact of the senses, can recall knowledge that is already in her. Now let us proceed to the hints that Plato seems to give about recurrence. I mentioned that he insists upon the necessity of understanding incommensurability in order to get a right view of things. That's from Laws. Speaking of what is behind his attempts to awaken his listeners to a different understanding of existence, he says, "I shall leave nothing untried until I either persuade them or achieve something that will help them in their life when they come into being again and meet with similar discussions." End quote. His interlocutor exclaims ironically, "You certainly have a short time in view." End quote. The reply is, "Nay, the time is merely nothing in comparison with all time." End quote. Plato seems to be thinking of a different cycle of recurrence as belonging to the individual, one that is independent of and incommensurable with the world process. See Republic. What is meant by all time? I think that the period of recurrence of the entire universe is all time, a certain period which includes within it all other periods, like a great wheel containing smaller ones within. In his commentary on the Timaeus, Proclus says that, quote, "all souls have different periods, greater or less." End quote. The soul of the world and the soul of man have different periods. period and soul, be it noted, are very closely related ideas. Over and above all these smaller periods is a great period which comprehends them all. Quote, all time exists in the one period of the universe. Apokastasias is different to different souls, some being shorter, some being longer. End quote. The apokastasias of the universe, quote, has for its measure the whole extension of time and the whole evolution of it, than which there is no greater except by the again and the again. End quote. The soul, whether we think of man's soul or the soul of the universe, is thus connected with the period of time that belongs to its cycle. Quote, the soul of the universe alone energizes through the whole of time, but other souls in a part of this whole, conformably to which their apokastasias is defined, end quote, i.e. within the wheel of recurrence of the universe are smaller and smaller wheels which have their own period of revolution. This is like the vision of Ezekiel. Now, if a man's life can repeat itself again and again in a particular part of time, this part of time must always exist. If the life of Caesar can repeat itself and is repeating itself, the part of history in which it repeats itself must always exist. It is plain that at least a four-dimensional world is necessary for this view. If only the present moment of the world has existence, the independent repetition of each individual time cycle would be impossible. The repetition of the individual life would then be one belonging only to the repetition of all the world in passing time. But Plato seems to imply that his hearers may meet the same discourses in a period of time very short in comparison with all time. If the historical world is extended in the dimension of time, then all is there fitted into the part of time that it belongs to, and our present moment that we experience now is merely one out of an infinite number of present moments that are, and numerically are, the same. It is only in this way that we can understand how the life of every human being can repeat itself in that part of historical time to which it belongs, more frequently than once in the circle of all time. In another place, speaking of the great rewards that man can receive if he searches for truth, Plato appears to dwell upon the same idea. Such great rewards, he says, cannot be obtained in a short time, and the life of man is very short. How can anything great be contracted into a small space of time? The whole time between childhood and old age is brief in comparison with all time. Rather describe it as nothing. End quote, from the Republic. He seems to mean that man has not enough time in one single revolution of his life to reach individuality. He may get nothing more than a glimpse of what has to be done. If death ends all, of what use is this? It must be remembered that the thought belonging to the period from which we are drawing this material had not yet been weakened by the idea that man perfects himself, or is perfected in some state after death. It is in life that we have to perfect ourselves. If we limit this life to one single journey between birth and death, there is not enough time. People give up trying just because of this appearance of things. They do not bend the life round in a circle, but leave the whole matter to the hereafter. We cannot grasp that beyond the end lies the beginning. Natural understanding will not conceive this. It can only conceive that beyond the end lies either nothingness or something entirely new. Beyond our life we meet, our life. We cannot turn in any other direction. It is obvious that Plato thought of recurrence in the light of possible development, and not merely as an incomprehensible process of eternal repetition. The circle of the life need not be traversed endlessly without change. We have seen also that Proclus regarded time as a perfecting process. Every living thing had its individual period of apokastasias and moved towards its possible perfection. Now, if the same time recurs and one enters the same moment and changes something belonging to one's former experience of that moment, must it not follow that one changes what has been done in the former experience of that moment, because the time is the same? it is extraordinarily difficult to catch a glimpse of what this means. An image may assist our thought. I think, however, that the image is not satisfactory, and that the crux of the matter lies in understanding what the same time means. Regarding the life as a fixed circle, this figure by itself will not represent the possibilities of growth of that life. It will represent only the constant going round of the life. But supposing a person begins to leave a trace of himself in this life, one that accumulates, what effect will this addition have on the circular process? We find in ancient thought that time is sometimes connected with the image of the spiral. For example, in the Mithraic religion, which so closely rivaled Christianity at the beginning of our era, boundless time was deified. In the existing representations of this god, the spiral appears as a snake round the body. Was recurrence a secret teaching of Mithraism? Proclus refers to the people, quote, who celebrate time as a god, eternal, boundless, young and old, and of a spiral form, and besides this also as having its essence in eternity, as abiding always the same, and as possessing infinite power. For how could it otherwise comprehend the infinity of apparent time, and circularly lead all things to their former condition and renovate them, and also recall things which become old through it, to their proper measure, as being at once comprehensive both of things that are moved in a circle and according to a right line? For a spiral is a thing of this kind. End quote, Proclus, Timaeus. Now it is plain that a time spiral requires 3 dimensions for its representation. A cycle requires only 2 dimensions. If we think of time as a straight line, then we add 1 dimension above the 3 of space. But if we think of all lives in time as being curved and returning on themselves, we need to add 2 dimensions over and above the 3 of space. And if we replace this time circle by the figure of a spiral, we require to add 3 dimensions of time over and above the 3 of space. Quote, the 3 dimensions of time can be regarded as the continuation of the 3 dimensions of space, i.e. as the 4th, the 5th and the 6th dimensions of space. A 6-dimensional space is undoubtedly an Euclidean continuum, but of properties and forms totally incomprehensible to us. The 6-dimensional form of a body is inconceivable for us, and if we were able to apprehend it with our senses, we should undoubtedly see and feel it as 3-dimensional. 3-dimensionality is the function of our senses. Time is the boundary of our senses. 6-dimensional space is reality, the world as it is. End quote, from Ouspensky, New Model of the Universe. 6-dimensional reality, the world as it really is, quote, we perceive only through the slit of our senses, touch and vision, and define as 3-dimensional space, ascribing to it Euclidean properties. Every 6-dimensional body becomes for us a 3-dimensional body, existing in time, and the properties of the 5th and 6th dimensions remain for us imperceptible. End quote. According to Ouspensky, the 3 dimensions of time enter into every moment. If we picture a straight line along which past, present and future lie, this is the line of the 4th dimension. At right angles to this line is the 5th dimension, and the perpetual existence of every moment is established by this dimension. The life regarded only as a circle lies, as it were, on the surface formed by these 2 dimensions. But entering this surface, and at right angles to it, is the 3rd dimension of time. The circle of life can now be turned into a spiral. Quote, the 5th dimension is movement of the circle, repetition, recurrence. The 6th dimension is the way out of the circle. If we imagine that one end of the curve rises from the surface, we visualize the 3rd dimension of time, or the 6th dimension of space. The line of time becomes a spiral. End quote. The figure of the spiral, Ouspensky observes, quote, is only a very feeble approximation to the spiral of time. It is merely its possible geometrical representation. The actual spiral of time is not analogous to any of the lines we know, for it branches off at every point. And as there can be many possibilities in every moment, so there can be many branches at every point. A figure of three-dimensional time will appear to us in the form of a complicated structure consisting of radii diverging from every moment of time." End quote. All these radii, taken together, form the three-dimensional continuum of time. This represents every possibility. If we could experience, follow, be conscious in every one of these radii, we would realize every possibility. But we only realize one possibility at a time, and the line in time that our lives make is the line of the fulfillment of one possibility. Quote, "We live and think and exist on one of the lines of time, but the second and third dimensions of time, that is, the surface on which this line lies, and the solid in which this surface is included, enter every moment into our life and into our consciousness." End quote. We may in our dreams sometimes glimpse possibilities that belong to the moment, the directions of other branches of radii that exist but which we do not follow this time. All these radii, or lines of possibility branching from every possible moment, form a three-dimensional continuum which Ouspensky calls the time solid. In recurrence, the same line of time will be followed that has been followed before by those people whom Ouspensky calls types of absolute recurrence. The life in such cases is the same each time, but at each repetition it becomes more easy, more certain. No new events enter into the life, no other possibilities are realized. The sameness of the lives creates in such people a kind of certainty and inevitability. They have a kind of ironical contempt for people who are restless and are seeking for something. The stability of their lives is grounded in the unchanging nature of their recurrences. They always do the same things again and again and must do them. They think the same things and say the same things over and over again. Those people who rapidly attain fame and success, who rise very quickly, are also, in Ouspensky's view, people of absolute recurrence. While they endeavour to explain their fame and success by pointing to their hard work, shrewd judgment, simple fare, etc., the real reason is that they have followed the same line lifetime after lifetime, and that each time success has become easier to win. What they attribute to intuition, business instinct, application, wisdom, etc., is really unconscious memory. Ouspensky describes two other types or forms of recurrence, descending and ascending. He conceives the world of humanity as divided into three groups. The first group is that of absolute recurrence, which consists of people whose lives are always the same. The second group is composed of those whose lives are descending in recurrence. Quote, "With each new life they fall more and more easily, offer less and less resistance, their vital force gradually weakens." End quote. Such lives that are descending at each recurrence cannot be stayed. The whole tendency of the accumulated past presses them down. Try as one will to help them, they slip beyond one's reach. The third group is that composed of people whose lives are ascending. These people are those who are not hindered by their success in life, nor are they hindered by repeated failure or increasing weakness or violence in the life, which so often characterizes the descending type. An ascending life connotes inward change. Unless there is capacity for such change, the life cannot change. People may not be so fixed in life, so attached to their interests, sufferings, cares, anxieties, reputation, position, prestige, etc., that there is absolutely no possibility of inward change. Ouspensky gives us two images to assist thought about change in recurrence: the spiral and the branching off of lines at every point of the spiral. Some of these branches or lines must be on the same level as the life itself. Some must rise above the life and some below it. If the life changes for the worst, it must follow the descending branches and so becomes a descending spiral, and vice versa. If it follows branches on the same level, it must remain the same quality, although with variations. At every moment of the life these branches enter, and I think that we have to conceive of the life as being not rigidly confined to one point, but as simultaneously following several different directions from which a resultant direction arises. As a result, the life either evolves or degenerates. Ouspensky speaks of the absolute destruction of souls that follow the descending spiral. It is, of course, impossible to know whether this is so. I do not see how it can be possible, for everything must sooner or later meet its turning point, and therefore it seems possible to think that a descending life reaches some nadir and once more enters on a spiral of ascent. The annihilation of anything in the more dimensional world is impossible for me to imagine. The views on time and recurrence expressed in this volume show us that we belong to our own period. Every person belongs to his period, to his part of time which is the place of his experience. He dwells in that particular part of the total fabric of living mankind extended through time. He traverses and retraverses this section which is the house of his life. He returns and returns again, revolving in his life, in the part of time which is its position. Here is his field of experience, and here lie all the elements for his experience, realized and unrealized. The question is how he lives in this given field of experience, to which he returns and where he finds what he has left behind, what he has done, as when we enter a room next day and find it as we left it the previous day. But we cannot know exactly what form recurrence will take. I will meet my life again, and I will meet my problems again in some form. I will meet the effects of what I have done and what I have not yet done, but I cannot say in what form. In the light of higher space I can understand that I will escape from nothing, but I do not know what constitutes payment for what I have not done, or what effect action at one point of my life in time will have on another part, either in past or future. Two apparently irreconcilable teachings about the hereafter reach us historically: some form of repetition of the life on the earth, and the idea of a beyond, that is, a world of spirits, another world, a world of heaven and hell. In both these teachings the idea of judgment exists. In the Buddhist teaching, where the idea of the repetition of the life is stressed, the form of repetition depends on whether one has lived well or evilly in the previous life on earth. But in this teaching there is also the idea of a beyond, attained through the overcoming of all the grasping desires belonging to us in life. In the Christian teaching there is only a hint of the idea of again becoming, palingenesis, and the emphasis appears to be laid on a hereafter. Lazarus, the man who has nothing, passes to heaven. The rich pass to the place of torment. Christ speaks of the wicked, those who cling to what hinders them, being cast into hell. Swedenborg insisted that at death man became a spirit and found himself in a world exactly like this, at first sight so much so that the man did not know that he was dead. Then, according to his state of understanding, he gravitated little by little in the direction of his ruling love, and so passed either towards heaven or hell. If a man is sick in his soul when he dies, and has tried to do nothing to cure his sickness, he remains sick in his soul after death, and gravitates to that level of the world beyond that is the objective expression of the inner state of himself. Is it not possible that both these apparently contradictory teachings may express different sides of the truth? May not the repetition of the life on earth be one aspect of truth, and the idea of the spirit of man dwelling apart from the earth be another? Our existence may be a far wider and greater existence than we grasp. Must we confine existence to the present moment of time in the visible world? The idea of the fourth dimension, of higher space, changes our view of existence. We may have more existences than one existence, though our senses make us believe that we only have one existence, and a very minute one. All that we have done so far may be gathered into some spiritual existence, into a kind of spiritual sum total, and all that we are doing now, in what we take as our sole existence, may be affecting and may be affected by this spiritual sum total of existence. In that case, the idea of the repetition of the life will not contradict the idea of a spiritual state following on death. The whole thing is interlocked, one system, beyond our logical minds and beyond any visual image by which it can be represented. It is difficult to reconcile oneself to the view that a single life determines our lot. We seem to come toward the end of our life just when we begin to get some insight. The illusion of passing time makes us think that we cannot change the past, and that it is not worthwhile trying to change anything now. We may just begin to realize that we were never taught anything about how we had to live life, or about what we really had to do. We probably thought that education taught us how to live, and after a long period of perplexity began to realize that we had to find out things for ourselves. Then it may seem too late. There does not seem to be time for anything, and we easily give up trying to think. The whole impression of the life is a confused one. We do not think we are only beginning something, but merely coming to the end of something. If we believe in a judgment and a hereafter, if we believe that our final lot is determined by this single confused life we have lived, the idea seems so inadequate that it tends to make us merely shrug our shoulders and turn aside from all such thoughts. It is surely here that the idea of the repetition of the life necessarily comes in. Death then means that we come to the end of our time. Life is a day. If we thought that we had only today and not tomorrow, would we think it worthwhile to undertake what we are doing at this moment? Can we not realize that we must have a future, that our whole being is constructed to have a future? Without some form of the idea of future, how can we understand life? How can we possibly interpret it, save in the most negative way? And why should we confine our idea of future only to a disembodied state, which many of us find difficult in accepting? Remember that we do not live only in this little visible moment, but in a world extended in every direction, visible and invisible. We can only understand the evolution of man in terms of recurrence. We carry with us no remembrance of former times, because we leave no trace, because we let everything drive us hither and thither, because we are creatures of the moment and so do not evolve. We do not understand the evolution of ourselves is to get beyond ourselves. How little we know what this means, and that this depends upon memory of ourselves. For this reason, Ouspensky connects the evolution of man with recollection. He says that every evolving individual remembers, and that with this kind of remembering is connected a mysterious quality which distinguishes it from ordinary memory. But such memory is not enough in itself. Quote, as evolution means escaping from the wheel of the fifth dimension and passing into the spiral of the sixth dimension, recollection has importance only when it bears an active character in a certain definite direction. End quote. It must create a definite longing for something different and lead to definite inner work, that is, inner change. Ouspensky believes that a man can complete his evolution in a particular part of time, and that when this happens he can go back in time and appear at some point in historical time. Remember that with the view of higher space in mind, the living past is understood. History is alive at every point. For us it is merely history. For us it seems unalterable, though of course our estimates of it are constantly changing. But for itself it is living. It is a part of the world, part of the living age. Quote, we cannot leave behind us the sins of our past. We must not forget that nothing disappears. Everything is eternal. Everything that has been is still in existence. The whole history of humanity is the history of crime, and the material for this history continually grows. We cannot go forward with such a past as ours. The past still exists, and it gives and still gives its results, creating new and ever new crimes. Man must go back, seek for and destroy the causes of evil, however far back they lie. It is only in this idea that the hint of the possibilities of a general evolution can be found. It is only in this idea that the possibility of changing the karma of humanity lies, because changing the karma means changing the past. There will be no possibility of thinking of evolution of humanity if the possibility did not exist for individually evolving man to go into the past and struggle against the causes of the present evil which lie there. End quote. This going into the past and appearing in another part of time is not recurrence. It is reincarnation, and this is the only reincarnation which Ouspensky teaches, i.e., people existing now are not reincarnations of past historical figures, but some people in what for us is the historical past may be reincarnations of people who existed in our part of time. Such as we are, we can only know recurrence, and to change our lives we must change ourselves. Every effort towards inner change lies at a point of force in the circle of the life, affecting all the life, both past and future. The original Orphic Bacchic teaching, which lies beyond the dawn of our European civilization, contained the idea of the repetition of our earthly existence and the necessity of freeing the soul from bondage to the experiences of life in order to escape from the will of existence. Pindar says that those who, quote, through 3 lives can stand fast under trial, end quote, reach the Isles of the Blessed. Plato refers to a triple repetition, the soul being shown samples of lives before incarnation and making a choice. Proclus, referring to this choice of lives, says that the soul chooses the same kind of life by habit because it does not retain any clear memory and judgment. But he adds that whatever the choice of life may be, the soul may subsequently live well or ill within it. Whitaker observes that the most distinctive fault of Proclus is that for the perfection of the universe and of each soul, all possibilities must be realized, quote, and that the possibilities can be completely realized in no one life, even when it chooses and finds the best, end quote. In the myth of Air, Plato shows that the idea of the repetition of the life and the idea of another world beyond this, to which the souls go at death, were both included in the same teaching. The soul has choice, but it chooses according to habit. Most curious, he said, was the spectacle, sad and laughable and strange, for the choice of the souls was in most cases based upon the experiences of the previous life, end quote. There is an Orphic fragment which refers to the incalculable value of memory, i.e. memory of the life. The impure and uninitiated soul passes into sleep. It passes into sleep and forgetfulness. It cannot remember what it is, just as we, in the little death of nightly sleep, usually lose ourselves. In the Orphic ritual, the soul says, "Give me quickly to drink of the cold water of the lake of memory." The individual identity is then restored, the soul knows itself and remembers. The doctrine of recurrence teaches that the moment of death is the moment of birth, that the life is re-entered where it stands in time, and choice for us lies in this life. Only by remembering can we make choice. The life can ascend through right choice and right memory, and it must be added right knowledge and right ideas. Such memory can eventually extend to memory of lives. The evolving man remembers.